Thank you all so much for coming out tonight and for our wonderful panelists. My name is Amanda Kovach, and I'm the Curator of Education here at the Museum of Contemporary Art, North Miami. And it is one of the joys to get to hear so many voices and stories as part of my job. Before proceeding, MOCA acknowledges that we stand on the current and ancestral home of the Seminole and Miccosukee tribe of Indians of Florida. We further acknowledge the Calusa, Yaega, Miami, and Tequesta peoples as historic caretakers of this land. We honor and thank them for their past, present, and future stewardship of Southern Florida. This evening, we welcome you to Conversations at MOCA, Defining Sound and Space, the History and Legacy of Black Marching Bands, inspired by the work of Jamia Richmond Edwards. Through the exhibition Ancient Future, Richmond Edwards, who is an alumnus of Jackson State University and Howard University, blends elements from the past, present, and her envisioned future, weaving her experiences with HBCU marching bands and majorette performances together. Black marching bands are deeply embedded in the fabric of the United States. These ensembles have represented a powerful assertion of presence, public expressions of cultural identity, community pride, and creativity. We are honored to have our three distinguished guests to speak here to their power and enduring legacy. I'd like to introduce first our moderator, and I'll turn it over to him. Dr. Melvin L. Butler is an associate professor at the University of Miami, where he teaches on the Department of Musicology at the Frost School of Music, and serves as Associate Dean of the Office of Center for Global Black Studies. In October 2023, he began a 2-year term as the 35th president of the Society for Ethnomusicology. Yes. Yes, the first Black president. A scholar, performer with broad interest in music and religion of the African diaspora, he has conducted field research on popular music and religion of Haiti, Jamaica, and the United States. His research explores Black music making, improvisation, and transcendence with an emphasis on the discourse of cultural authenticity and the power that inflicts spirit-filled Christian worship. Dr. Butler's first book, Island Gospel, Pentecostal Music and the Identity in Jamaica and the United States, examines the theological and experiential connections between Jamaica and African American Pentecostal music and gospel performance. An internationally acclaimed jazz saxophonist, Butler has performed with Brian Blade and the Fellowship Band for over 2 decades. Dr. Butler?
Thank you. Thank you. Hope you can hear me okay. It's such a pleasure to be here, a privilege to be here. It's my distinct honor to be the panelist for this wonderful event. I'm going to read the bios of our two guests here. I'll say a few comments about Black marching bands as they relate to my experience in this exhibit, and then I'm really going to quickly turn it over to our panelists with a broad 2-part question, 3-part question, and we're going to have a nice conversation for about 45 minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions from the audience. So I'm honored to be sitting next to Dr. Fredera Hadley. Dr. Hadley is an ethnomusicology professor in the music history department at the Juilliard School, where she teaches courses on ethnomusicology and African American music. Her work has been featured in academic journals and the press, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, and Billboard magazine. Her commentary is included in documentaries, including Little Richard, I Am Everything, the 1619 Project, PBS's The Black Church, and others. Dr. Hadley's current book projects, including the forthcoming book, I'll Make Me a World, the musical impact of HBCUs, centers on the musical ecosystems of historically Black colleges and universities and their impact on Black music and beyond. Dr. Hadley is a proud alumna of 2 historically Black colleges, Florida A&M University and Clark Atlanta University.
Hey!
She earned her PhD in ethnomusicology at Indiana University and taught at Oberlin College and Conservatory before joining the Juilliard faculty in 2018. Our second panelist is Mr. Rich Medina. He is an elite international DJ who, in the 30-plus years since he spun his first record, has turned his young love for music into a celebrated career as a platinum-selling record producer, recording artist, poet, journalist, and Ivy League lecturer. From the legendary 9-year run of his Little Ricky's Rib Shack party at APT in Manhattan's Meatpacking District, to his globe-spanning, conscious-raising, dance floor-shaking party jumpin' funk, a sonic tribute Afrobeat and its iconic Afrobeat and its iconic creator Fela Kuti, Rich stands without peer as a contemporary DJ of diverse range and taste. A respected spoken word artist, he has performed on stages around the world, and his sonorous voice has been utilized by everyone from EA Sports to Nike. He's an intellectual and public speaker who has lectured at TEDx Philly and his alma mater, Cornell University, amongst others. And he's a producer of note, crafting work with a range of artists, including Jill Scott, Jay Dilla, Bobicito Garcia, and Phil Asher. In 2021, he made a transition of sorts to venue owner and music director at Dante's Hi-Fi, Miami's first vinyl listening bar. Let's welcome our two guest panelists, both of them. Yeah.
What's up, guys?
So as I said, it's a real privilege to be here. I walked in and immediately got a little tour, and I'm struck by the multiple layers of meaning on display here by Jamea Richmond Edwards. And I'm really excited to think together with our panelists here and with all of you about the ways in which music, marching band music of HBCUs in particular, can be meaningful, but also how it relates to a broad range of Black expressive cultures, as I like to call them. The things that we see, the things that we hear, you know, and you think about all the different senses and how they're involved. And I think, when I think about my own experience in marching band, which was not at an HBCU, I am nevertheless struck by the intersections of sight and sound and movement. And I'm a little jealous of Fredera Hadley because she had this HBCU experience. And I said, man, why didn't I go to an HBCU? I would have been so much stronger and more powerful. No, you couldn't tell me anything. And I would have gotten to have a marching band experience that would have been much more expressive, I think, and maybe less confined feeling. But I would love to, you know, I'm a saxophonist. I'm also a scholar, and I really enjoy thinking about music in this holistic way, how it moves us, how we allow ourselves to be moved by it. And I know our presenters, our panelists, have intimate connections with Black expressive culture and music, and I would love to sort of get things started by asking them, asking you, if you would, Dr. Hadley and Mr. Medina, comment a little bit about your personal relationship to this topic. You know, why does it matter to you? Why should it matter to us and to the world in general? What's noteworthy? What's remarkable about marching band music at HBCUs? Anything else you want to say about that? Please.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to share time with us. I am just really grateful to sit between these two brilliant brothers, both of whom I've known for a very long time, so it feels like family up here, and I'm sure it's going to soon feel like family in here. That's a great question. I am an HBCU graduate, and I am the child of HBCU graduates, and I am a person born into an HBCU family. And so a lot of times when we talk about institutions like colleges and universities, that can feel kind of cold and remote. But for me, it means the very center of Black community, right? And in talking about HBCU bands, I know because I'm an academic, one might expect me to feign impartiality, but I'm very biased. I graduated from Florida A&M University. Hey. And our band is known as America's Band. I didn't say it, the people said it. And so, and I grew up watching this band. My parents, who were also graduates of Florida A&M University, taught me the school alma mater and the words to lift every voice and sing based on a vinyl record that the Marching 100 recorded in the 1970s called FAMU Spirit. When they realized I was listening to it, my mother was like, oh, it's time for you to learn to lift every voice and sing in the alma mater. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I grew up not far from here. I'm from West Palm Beach, Florida, just up I-95. And so one of the really important things we learned by looking at HBCU marching bands is I think it's important that we know that we're looking at layers of lineage, layers of love and labor, layers of skill building. Growing up in West Palm Beach, every junior high school and high school that had a black band director, that band director graduated from Florida A&M University and had been in the marching band and was teaching their students, their drum majors, to march in the style of the Marching 100, and certainly Bethune-Cookman University is a part of this ecosystem as well. So by the time those young people get to campus freshman year, they've already been participating in battles of the band, they've already been to homecoming, they've already been to summer band camp. They know exactly what they're stepping into. And so that is a legacy of teaching pioneered by people like Dr. William P. Foster, the founder of the band, that the band was founded in the late 1940s, I think. We're talking about 2024. And a lot of those rituals, traditions, repertoire remains intact. So I think it's really important in a world where people think it's just kind of like a natural thing that people can do, how hard members of these bands have been working, how many decades and years and hours of practice go into creating something that feels really beautiful and soulful when we see it on the fields at halftime.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
I agree with everything Dr. Hadley said. There's so many layers to the onion in front of us when we're talking about HBCUs, marching bands, Black progress under the eyes of colonialism, a culture of denial, a culture of opportunities never even being presented to us, let alone us being put on a playing field that's level and granted the same opportunities that the colonizers' children had. So when you begin to speak about HBCUs, it's the quintessential middle finger to the white gaze. Not only do we want an education, but we want it from people that look like us. We want to be around people that look like us. And while being around each other, we're going to prove to each other that we're at minimum as good as, more than likely better than you, because we got it out the mud. Remember, you put us there.
Preach.
Right? So I think when we begin to talk about HBCUs, we have to start with that. I personally have to start with that vocabulary. My mother's mother was born into slavery, couldn't even spell school. My mama didn't get out to 9th grade. A hell of a lot of Black pride in the house, though. My grandfather built 9 churches in New Jersey. Probably couldn't spell hammer, for all I know, but built 9 churches. Hell of a lot of Black pride there. If you know anything about the Baptist Church in the United States of America, we don't fear our God. We celebrate our God through music, celebration. The vast majority of the band members in my grandmother's choir and band were also part of the same system, slavery, sharecropping, and Jim Crow. And my dumb ass ended up going to Cornell. The whitest place in the United States. So I also feel a little bit of a way about not going to HBCU. But, you know, there's so many angles, and I know we're going to get into it. But for me, it starts there. It starts from the vocabulary of a people that weren't given any vocabulary, and whatever vocabulary they came here with was removed from them, and they were put into a chattel system. So to have our own institutions and to have our own ability to express ourselves with not giving a damn about the white gaze is an enormous component of the foundation that all of us people of color in here today stand on.
Amen.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. I really like that both of you made reference to, family, to ancestors. That's so much a part of the blackest experiences that I've had in churches, sort of making reference to where we've come from, to the bridges that brought us over, to where we come from, to the way we used to sing, to the old school. And so I want to ask the panelists to comment on issues of time, right? Pastness, things ancient, things old school, but also the present and the future, because when I look around here with this artwork, I see, elements of Afrofuturism, right? At the same time, there are these references to various kinds of histories and pasts and the struggles and the joys and triumphs of life. So, this sort of duality, if you will, pastness and futurism, it manifests itself in so many ways to me. Certainly, if you think about, spinning vinyl records or church experiences, religion, ritual, and maybe all, with marching bands as well. I was just the other day I was looking at, I think on YouTube, the movie Drumline. Actually the second one in 2014, and there's a scene where the band they're doing like Earth, Wind and Fire. I think it's September or something like that. And so that got me thinking about Earth, Wind and Fire and the clothing that they would wear and how it always seemed to be, let's say, outer space connected. So anyway, I had all these thoughts about pastness and presentness and future. Can you comment on that? How do you think these issues of time relate to this marching band tradition, to the arts in general, and to maybe the issues that we find in black music of 2023, 2024 now? Yeah.
Is anyone here familiar with a gentleman by the name of James Europe? James Europe,
This is my job.
for argument's sake, James Europe is the Martin Luther King of black music in the United States of America. When you think about marching bands, where do you do any marching?
In the military.
In the military. When black folks were allowed into the military, you know what we were allowed into the military to do? Two things: cook and entertain.
Yep.
James Europe and the Hellfighters Band, which was his orchestral band, is our introduction into Afrofuturism, because prior to him, when would you ever see a black man of any type of influence in a military outfit? When would you see a black man who could not only read, but could compose and write music for 17 different instruments in harmony and arrangement and time signature? He's the first Negro alien. So when we talk about Afrofuturism, I firmly believe that beyond Zora Neale Hurston, it begins with James Europe and what he brought to the United States military and what his compositions brought to black people not necessarily needing to perform classical music or music written by white composers or perform music in the white stage and theater tradition. And it was kind of hiding in plain sight, forcing our cultural dynamics on an institution that didn't want us there in the first place, let alone on the front of the sled of, quote unquote, protecting us from the enemies of the United States. The United States was the enemy of us. So for me, Afrofuturism begins with James Europe.
The past, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
I love that you went there because for a reason, I see HBCUs as a sacred thing. The fact that they still exist sometimes blows my mind, given the history of this country. And I think of them, I talk a lot about young black people in the book because part of what makes HBCUs so special to me is that they can be a place of refuge for young black people in a country that makes it very hard for young black people to gather, right? We police that heavily. Local neighborhoods get nervous when there are too many young black people in a place together. But under the auspices of education, there is relative shelter. And I say relative because when I was a student at FAMU in the late 90s, it got bombed twice by a white supremacist who was angry that we were all there. And he's still in prison, went up for parole and it was denied. He's still in prison. So I say relative, but nevertheless, the futurism part is that these campuses are places of relative safety for young black people where racism doesn't disappear, but it can recede a little bit. And it allows it to be a place of possibility for them to dream and explore who they might become. And very often we come out on the other side of that doing something we didn't even know existed when we got there, right? And so bringing this back to marching bands, and I always say when I'm teaching, like, time is the most complicated construct to try and apply to Black music, because the past is future, the present is past, all of that. It's just really, it doesn't seem to fit the way that the linearity of like Western time, like it just doesn't work that way for me anyway. But I also think about it in a literal way. My cousin, who I interviewed for this project, was a head drum major of the FAMU Marching 100 in the late 80s, and he talks about how when he got to FAMU, he had never really been farther than Atlanta, and this was 1989, and the marching band gets invited to go to Paris to celebrate the 200th anniversary of Bastille Day, and all of a sudden, he gets to get a passport. He's never been out of the country. Most of the young Black people in this band have never been out of the country. Many of them never been on planes. And all of a sudden, they find themselves marching down the Champs-Élysées, playing James Brown's music, right? That literally helps them to conjure a future that would have been unimaginable without their participation in this marching band, right? And so that, what can happen because of the excellence, the skill, the talent, the care of faculty and institutions for these young people is astounding to me. I'm gonna put you on the spot. My dear friend Christine is here. Her nephew is in the Marching 100 right now. And he got to go to Paris and march in the Marching 100 for the 2022 Louis Vuitton men's fashion show. Again, so many of these young people did not have passports. And the creative team said, we'll do whatever we have to do to make that possible, to get those things turned around, get those applications turned around, so that these young people can have this experience that they may have never thought and dreamed of for themselves, but now they've had it. You know, they've marched, and Kendrick Lamar is sitting there bopping to what they're doing. And what they're doing, and this is important, what they're playing is the music of the institution. They're playing the spirit songs of Florida A&M University. So they're in Paris being entirely themselves. And what does that do for what they think is possible in their lives? And that's what I think is sacred about what can happen in these ensembles.
And another wrinkle to that is, aside from the marching bands, you also had how do I say it? The Fisk University, the Fisk Jubilee Singers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next to James Europe, the Fisk Jubilee Singers was a gospel choir that was philanthropically funded by people like Albert Barnes and the Black intelligentsia of the day to travel Europe and sing Negro spirituals in order to introduce the world to the idea that Black people actually are one full person, not 3/5 of a person. Black people are able to deal with composition and sophisticated feelings beyond work. So the Fisk Jubilee Singers kicked down the door of what Fredar just spoke to so eloquently. The Fisk Jubilee Singers are really the key to that door, institutionally, academically, in the United States as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So fascinating. I'm sure we're going to have some really great questions from the audience in a few minutes. I was just reflecting on, like why I didn't go to an HBCU. And I remember, so I graduated high school in 1988. You were all supposed to gasp in disbelief. Just told you my age. Like, no way. I was like, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Like, and I remember, applying to colleges, and I was discouraged from going to an all-black school. Parents like, oh, why do you want to go to a black school? It's not a black world, and And so I went. I got a great scholarship to Berklee College of Music, and my girlfriend at the time, she went to FAMU, and we had this conversation. And in the years since, I've met all kinds of people who have had these amazing experiences. Backs are straight. They got new confidence. Friends. They went to Morehouse, and so I love hearing about this now. It hurts me a little bit, but I love hearing about HBCUs as sacred spaces. But at the same time, I'm thinking about the stigma that's sometimes attached to Black solidarity. To like, why are all the Black people sitting together? Like, what are they doing? And to Black forms of expression. And when we came in and we had the little tour, I think it was Lauren Backus. She was talking about issues of accessibility and how Jamea Edwards makes use of materials, the everyday, the things that are close and caught up in the messiness of everyday life, and I wonder about that musically as well. Ideas of transformation, recycling, remaking, remaking. You want to comment on that? I mean, it's sort of a key word. How does that figure into what you do, for example, Rich, as an artist and an entrepreneur? And then Dr. Hadley, into your work as a scholar and former dancer, if I may.
I think as a descendant of enslaved people, we are innately driven to make the absolute most of the resources before us, even if those resources are only the resources between your ears. The vast majority of the dreams that we've been able to achieve have come from between the ears of a Black man or between the ears of a Black woman who, in lock and step with a little bit of good luck, a little bit of timing, and a taste of white philanthropy, we end up kicking down doors that were designed to keep us out. I say to my friends all the time, when they give me accolades, that's cool, but we both know famous people. I'm not famous, I'm well respected. There's an enormous difference between the two. Both of us know famous people. They can't be in a room like this. The room would be mobbed out, right? There would be no dialogue happening. It would be a mob scene. So working from humble resources and working from a humble posture can put you in places where the elites exist, primarily because they find you novel, because you didn't have the resources or the access that they have. And of course, once you get there, the very first thing they want to do is get that photo op next to you so that they could be the one that was somehow affiliated with your arrival. I think all of us experienced that to varying degrees, particularly the people of color and the women in the room. So for me as an artist, the idea of, I don't have everything I need, but everything I need is within me and within my reach and within the company that I keep and the people that I choose to break bread with, and doing your best to not be the smartest person in the room. Surround yourself with people that know a lot more than you, with the recognition that there's a superpower in you that not a single one of those motherfuckers can do either. Because that's how any of us have gotten to the point where we would even want to be in a room like this. Is that fair? Yeah. I just want to, even in my job capacity at Dante's Hi-Fi, my objective is to level the playing field. It's not to show how much further down the track I am. It's to walk back down the track to where the next person is and say, hey, man, first of all, I didn't realize second place was that far back. Take a walk with me for a second. Let me show you how little space you have yet to go to get to the number one spot, too. I believe all of our elders, our mothers, grandmothers, caretakers, grandfathers, the mentors that we've chosen to adhere to, they've all given us that, right? Every player that you admire has got a fantastic coach somewhere. Might not be a famous coach either. The only thing they need to be famous for is making sure that the battery in their student or athlete's back is charged. And that student or athlete knows how to get back to the charger before they run out of gas, right? So when we talk about, I know as a music producer, I know people with studios and they got a $72 skillion worth of tools on the wall and the music sounds flat as a pancake.
Facts.
I know dudes that got this, 2 pencils, a little 8-track recorder, and some old headphones that they mama gave them or their daddy if they knew their daddy. And the music is symphonic and lush, thick, it has depth, it has durability, it can suffer sunshine, rain, darkness, light, because it's coming from a place of resource that is not material. And these aspirations to get into the white gaze and to receive all the same privilege that we've been denied, the idea that we need those things in order to achieve is bullshit. We all know that today. And when you talk about the tradition of HBCUs, HBCU marching bands, what that represents for cultural pride, particularly for people who don't play any instruments or sing. All of a sudden you get real instrumental. You got your air sax, you got your air guitar, everybody part of the band, right? And that's kind of what, and 90% of the people in that band, they got it out the mud just like you did. You know, and I believe we represent the same thing, you know?
Yeah.
I would only add that the quote that came to mind is something Aretha Franklin said when she put up money to bail Angela Davis out of jail. And people were like, well, why would you do that? You know, you're Aretha Franklin, you're the queen of soul. And she's just like, I get my money from black people support me. And so, of course, I'm going to give my money back to black people, right? And so as a professor, as a storyteller, as a writer, I really count it an honor that I get to listen to black music so deeply and to hear black people's stories. And I'm always humble, and I try to be really thoughtful in how I give that back, because it's theirs, it's ours, right? And it's important to me that when I'm in front of people, they see and hear themselves in what I'm saying. That's my litmus test of if I've done my job well. So for instance, you mentioned the Little Richard documentary, I Am Everything. And I was really nervous about doing that because my father, you mentioned the Baptist church, my father is a Baptist deacon, like 6'4", slim, salt of the earth. You know, he taught me how to farm and grow stuff. Like, he's that kind of guy. And he loves Little Richard. And I was like, I cannot mess this up, because this is my daddy's guy. And so here I am, like, pouring through all kinds of, you know how we do, doing the Little Richard deep dive to make sure that I don't mess this up, because my daddy's gonna see this. And I can't get this wrong. And I understand that this is sacred and important to my father and sacred and important to a whole lot of other people, right? And so that level of care and attention that's important to me, I first learned that for real at FAMU. Like, you don't get up here and you don't BS about this. You don't play about us. You don't do that, because too many people died, too many people suffered, too many people fought to keep this going for you to sit up here and just play with it any kind of way. You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, like the old hymn, a charge to keep I have, like that's a real thing to me. And my mother talks about this. She was like, when I got to FAMU in the 60s, the point was to get your education, and she would say, go back and help the race. But we would say, go back and help your people, the community, somehow find a way to give that back. And I think that happens musically. You mentioned the Fisk Jubilee Singers. These young people traveling Europe singing the music of their people, Negro spirituals. This is the first generation of people to get black people who were permitted to get an education. How they introduce themselves to the world is through the music of their people.
Yeah.
Like, that's, if you just stop for a second, that's kind of like amazing. They get to go out and be themselves in the world and represent their people, represent Fisk, right? And raise the money to help keep that school open. That's an extraordinary burden for young Black people, and that's an extraordinary contribution of young Black people. And I think when we're talking about these ensembles, we ought to always think about who is doing this. Yes, there's a faculty person involved, but these are young Black people, the same ones who get demonized in so many other aspects of our society, and they're giving us the best of them on these campuses, in their classes, in their music, and that's always worth listening to.
Yeah, wow, beautifully said. Yeah, I'm just soaking that in for a minute. Yeah, you made mention of, you said the word travel, and I mean, I think about, so I've done research in Haiti and Jamaica, and although I was born in Wichita, Kansas, and I've lived, it's kind of funny, for real. I lived in New York City for 10 years, Chicago, and now in Miami since 2016. I'm always struck by the multiplicity of Black ethnicities. You know, so I mean, the word Black means maybe different things to different people, but certainly there's there are people from all over the Caribbean, from Latin America, who might identify racially with the category Black, but there are also distinct cultural and national identities. And so, looking around here at this museum, you see all the evidence of the African diaspora, right? All the evidences of travel. And so I would love for you to comment on this idea of travel and, I don't know, transnationalism, transcendence, crossing boundaries, and how that's reflected, you think, in the music that we make, in the marching band tradition. I mean, is, the distinction between Blackness and African Americanness versus a more holistic sort of African diasporic connection, a connection to Africa. You have any thoughts?
I'm gonna jump in and talk about you for a second. Yeah. Because, I don't know if I said this before we came out, like, I know him because I was dancing to him DJing in clubs when I was in my 20s. And I'm bringing this up because he was one of the seminal DJs who really introduced me, like, in an embodied sense, to how all this music from different parts of Black diaspora, Africa, the Caribbean, all comes together. So my first encounter with that wasn't academic. It was listening to how you built a set, and how the way you built a set, all of us there at APT or wherever could dance from beginning to end. Like, and you put me onto genres that I didn't know existed, artists I didn't know existed, and I was like, my mind was, I'm from West Palm Beach. I grew up on Luke, y'all. Like, I'm like, I can't act like I knew who Fela was, or that you could dance like this to Fela. Like, how all of the, and I gotten a little taste of that at FAMU, because college, HBCU DJs have to be able to play for everybody who's there. You gotta have your East Coast part, your go-go, your Chicago house, your reggae, your Miami bass, some chopped and screw, all of that's gotta happen. So that was my domestic kind of window into that. But what you were able to do, like, blew the doors off of what I knew about Africa and African diasporic music. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, from my angle on that conversation, I'm a kid from the center of New Jersey, and my entire desire as a disc jockey was for New York City to take me seriously, because New York City is to music what Hollywood is to film. So if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. Frank Sinatra's a prophet. And it's New York City. All the silverback gorillas are there. You're not walking into no easy gym. You're not just gonna walk in that gym and beat people up. You gotta bring some technique to the table. And with all the talent in the city, what I realized was there was a great deal of very, very, very talented specialists. I play house music. Oh, I play hip hop. Oh, I play R&B. Oh, I play soul. If it was, we've talked about this before, Arturo, we've talked about this before. If you put it in a fighting analogy, you go to this place and there's great boxers, great wrestlers, great Muay Thai people, great Jiu-Jitsu people, great Krav Maga people, all these different disciplines. I want a piece of every single one of those disciplines. I want to be the only musical mixed martial artist in a room full of very talented specialists. So I can play around in your specialty with you all day. Because when I go to the gym that you work out in, I let the toughest guys in your gym beat me up so that when I go fight in my weight class, I'm gonna punish that guy. Musically, creatively. It's an analogy, but it's very real. Also, as a guy that played Division I basketball as an undersized, skinny swingman. So this is also the vocabulary of a frustrated athlete. Praise God for options. So, 2024, to be here today and to hear my dear friend, Dr. Hadley, say something like that is really redeeming because it speaks back to that hard work that you got to do when nobody's watching, that work that all of us, everybody in here, got so much dirt under your nails you can't get it out, right? You got to put polish over it. You can't get the dirt out. You spend too much time working. It's the results of that, and an appreciation for the fact that we are not a monolith. I'm from Jersey, trying to find my way in New York with a whole bunch of other transplants from all over the country and all over the world, all aspiring to assimilate and stand out at the same damn time. That's magic. That's where magic happens, right? Just like we're God-given talent and hard work, the meeting of those two things, that's where greatness is found. Opportunities like this give us the opportunity to unpack these things and unpack these dynamics, because as we become adults, we have a tendency to lose our coachability. I done been to this school, I done got this degree, I done got that degree, I done had these jobs and them jobs, I done did it. I'm Gucci, I got everything I need. No, you finish learning when they put you on the floor. Always the student. Otherwise, your toolbox is gonna plateau. The muscle will atrophy if you don't use it, right? So when you're exercising these things I've learned, and then you stop looking for what's more, that's the glass ceiling. That's the proverbial glass ceiling that any of us bump our head against. And until we go all the way back the line to tribal tradition, the griot tradition, slavery across Europe and in the United States, where we weren't allowed to carry on our traditions. We weren't allowed to read. We weren't allowed to learn actual mathematics. But how did all of them plantation houses get built?
Right.
Aside from reading and math and science.
Yes.
You call me crazy. So, we come from some hellified people. And you get out here in the arts and you start moving around and people are complaining about how difficult, it's so hard, it's so hard. Yeah, you know why? Because you're using your thumbs too much. You gotta use the rest of your fingers and your brain.
It's true.
We gotta remember that. So thank you for those beautiful words. And yeah, that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, that's beautiful, beautiful, yeah. Well, since you mentioned, thumbs and, sports, exercise, the through line here and something we haven't talked about a lot yet is the body and dance. It's what most people see of a HBCU marching band. First thing they notice is like the way they move. Like they're not just marching 1, 2, 3. They're like it's like twists and turns. And I was never a dancer, and even now, I asked my wife, can I dance? She's like, stop. She's just like, no, you can't.
Be your own people.
I can rock back and forth a little bit while I play, but I'm not a dancer. And there's something about like this so the whole body is involved in making the music. It's not just your thumbs. It's like you need to be you need to be embedded. You need to be embodied and fully there. And I see this, of course, in lots of ritual situations, worship situations. But it certainly manifests itself in the art that we produce. There's so much movement, there's so much rhythm in these pieces of art that are on these walls. Dr. Hadley, you got to know Rich Medina's work through embodied ways, through dancing, right? And so, why do you think that's so important? I mean, this idea of movement in the body and dance and African American, or just Black expressive culture and the music in particular.
My first thought when you said that was because Blackness swings, right? Like we talk about this sort of sense of groove and movement that's a little bit behind the beat, sometimes a little bit ahead of the beat. Like that's literally what Blackness does. And so, there is no music without dance. Your work is in churches and around ritual, and I'm teaching about that this semester. And one of the first things I told my students is that if we were watching a video of Karen Clark Sheard, the gospel singer, perform. I said, if you tied her hands behind her back, she would not be able to sing.
Yeah.
That's how essential, not just even dance, but the freedom of the body is to creating sound, right? And so to bring it to marching bands, Dr. Foster, who again founded the Marching 100, he said, he was like, it has to make people dance. That's the whole point. Like, that people will feel compelled to move. And so that's also why so much of the repertoire of HBCU bands are those incredible funk records from the 1970s, because that was dance music. And they have really great horn lines, right? Yeah. And so, and in the choreography, and I can't remember the name of the first the woman who was the first choreographer for the band, but she was looking at the dances that young people were doing and building that into the choreography of the band. We take that for granted now, but at that time, that was heresy, because bands, first of all, weren't supposed to be dancing like, they weren't supposed to be getting down like that. Right? You breaking all the rules right there. Right. And as the band evolved, they have a committee that is made up of students and faculty, where students get to have, well, this is how we dance, this is what we do. And those are the movements that you see make it into the choreography. So I think it's important on two levels. One, because dance and movement is such an essential part of Black being and Black music making. But again, going back to this idea that the HBCU marching bands in particular are meant to be in dialogue with broader Black community. So you can send that band anywhere in the world, in the United States, and a knowing audience is gonna hear themselves either through the songs that you're playing or the dances that you're doing. They're supposed to be a bridge between the institution, which can still be elitist, right? But allow people to feel, and which I think is why they're so immensely popular. I mean, you bring these bands to town. I went to a Battle of the Bands in Orlando before the Florida Classic. It was just a Battle of the Bands, high school bands from around the state, and it was like an Amway arena, and it was sold out.
Wow.
High school bands from Florida and Georgia, and then Bethune-Cookman and Florida A&M performed at the end. And people stayed because they see themselves and they hear themselves and what's going on. And they themselves, the band is creating an environment where they themselves can move, right? And so that offering of bodily freedom, engagement, like being present, is very similar to what Rich creates as a DJ, like giving us permission to step into freedom and movement and dance and joy and collective, sort of being together, all of those things which we need so much of. Yeah. The music is the portal, whether you're talking about DJs or HBCU marching bands, through which that happens. And I'll say this is why it isn't the same when in Ohio State or Florida State, they've now started hiring HBCU band directors, like HBCU graduates. And so I'll hear too much bass in like a Ohio State game or something. I'm like, what's y'all playing talking out the side of your neck? But I can't be. But it doesn't hit the same because the audience doesn't know the response to that call.
Right, yeah.
It just doesn't. So I'm not actually really worried when that happens, because you got to have both sides of that equation. You got to have the person who can send out the call and the community that can give you the response. Yeah. It's ritual,
absolutely,
right?
Yeah. Thank you.
And that leader.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That drum major and that band leader is also of the culture that they're representing. To quote the genius, AKA the Jizza from Wu-Tang Clan, first of all, who's your A&R? A mountain climber who plays an electric guitar? And he don't know the meaning of dope. You're looking for a suit and tie rapper that's cleaner than a bar of soap.
That's what he said.
I'll be damned if that don't sit down on topic for us on this particular topic, especially because the gaze that we were denied for so long is a 16th note, tight-lipped, conservative, kind of a, hey, we're having fun. There's not really any rhythm engaged in it. It actually sits itself inside a rhythm for grounds of celebration, not necessarily grounds of release, not necessarily grounds of true expression, interpretation, visual presentation of what you're hearing, the ability to not only jump into structures that we were kept out of, like educational institutions and live performative spaces beyond the white gaze, but to do it the way people of color do it. To not only do that, but to get together with other institutions that have the same type of organization and battle each other, not in a true literal win or lose composition, but to actually bring this fervor out of the entirety of the space, with the space engaged in which one of the songs that one of these bands is going to play and perform is going to get me at my highest vibration and my highest frequency. Which one was it? Neither, it's not a win or lose. They're both amazing. They're both going to blow my head off. But we got, because of the nature of what an HBCU battle is, I have no choice but to cast a vote as to who won that battle. Was it Grambling or Hampton? You know? You know, so the physicality of people of color, you know, we're talking about one of the loudest, brightest, most collective expressions of black culture ever presented in the marching band. The use of brass instruments for the bright disposition of the instrument and the way a trumpet and a few woodwind instruments can imitate a lead vocal of a song in a way that other woodwinds or other instruments can't. Those decisions, that blare being an announcement of arrival when we were always put in a posture to make ourselves as small as possible unless we was doing what massa told us to do. I think that some of us in here today, like, yeah, I could punch my massa in the mouth right now. I make $150,000 a year working for massa, and I still want to punch him in his damn face. The system that we talking about still exists. You know, the Klan don't wear pointy hoods no more. Now they wear gray suits and red power ties. It could go on and on and on with the ways these systems continue to affect things and continue to put us in a position to make, don't be so loud. Why you gotta say it like that? Why you always moving? Yeah, dumbass, because that's what we're here to do. That's what we're actually put here to do. It's only the colonial structure that constricts and squeezes that down into something that's very monolithic and straight ahead and on the 16th note. And the HBCU marching band, from the song composition decisions down to the physical expression of the drum majors and the instrumentalists to the majorettes, which kind of actually drive that whole aspect of it, because their instrument is their body. And just because you can't hear it does not mean it is not landing in your ears and in your spirit. And sometimes that visual is the thing that actually draws you in and makes you realize the song you recognize. You know the words to that song, but you never heard the lead vocal in a trumpet line before. But the way she's swinging, and then homegirl comes with her. There's 10 of them. We gotta wait for 10 of them to get in this thing. Oh, shit, that's Maurice White.
It's true.
It's a call and response of the highest order.
Yeah.
And it's one of the few spaces where, whether you're a person who has experienced 4 years of higher education, whether you aspire to 4 years of higher education or not, it's a place where everybody is welcome and everybody is being pushed to hit our individual and collective highest frequencies and vibrations. There's very few places in the world that it rings that loud like it does with the HBC marching band.
Yeah.
Can I say one thing really
Absolutely,
quickly? I know
sure.
we should get to Q&A, but you made me think about it when you're talking about the dancers. The unsung heroes of HBCU marching bands are the arrangers. Like, no, having a musician who is an arranger who can take a song that we all love, like September by Earth, Wind, and Fire, or, you know, I mentioned Talking Out the Side of Your Neck, and understand how to take that record and rearrange it musically and sonically so that we, the audience, we hear the parts of that song that make us love that song is a skill and an ability. You know, you think about a song like Lenny Williams' "'Cause I Love You," one of the best begging songs ever. You can't do that song without all the ohs at the end.
Right.
And that arranger has to think about who is going to play that and how is that going to sound in a way that we recognize it, right? You can only do that if not only do you know the music well, but you know the audience well, right? Because if that arrangement doesn't work, people are going to be sitting back like, well, what y'all going to do next? I don't even know what this is.
Right.
You know, and the arranger for the FAMU March 100 is Lindsey Sargent, and has been for like 30 plus years. And I remember, I'm dating myself, but that's fine. He did an arrangement when I was in college of Drew Hill's Sleeping in My Bed. And people called the radio station and asked for the marching band's version over the Drew Hill version. Wow. And so, you know, again, this doesn't happen out of nowhere. It is people's skill and talent and ability to be able to think through every step of what this should. I've seen Dr. Foster, his successor, Dr. White, sitting at computers, designing formations and what they think will be most exciting. Like, there's a tremendous, and too often, Black creation, Black music gets determined as only like natural ability, but there's an extraordinary amount of work that goes into every phase of what is happening when we see a show that we love and enjoy. And I think it takes nothing away from the freedom that we feel of that to honor the expertise and labor. Those young, my freshman band, my freshman roommate was in the marching band. She was on the drum line. My joke was, I met her in the spring, because I never saw her in the fall. She was always at band practice, always on the road. And so what these young people give up of themselves in order to be able to give us a thing of beauty and freedom, what their faculty and professors, every band staff, and this is true for all the ensembles, choral ensembles like the Fifth Jubilee Singers, what they do is we could not pay them enough for what it takes to make that happen. So I'd like to shout out the skills and the labor too.
Yeah. That deserves a hand, I think. Yeah.
They deserve a hand.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I think it's time to open this up for questions. I know there must be some out there in the audience, so I think Amanda's going to walk around with the microphone there. I think we've got a couple of questions over there.
Try and see if we can.
There we go.
We're going to have a question on this side. Okay.
You were talking about call and response, and that is something I say that's unique to Black marching band, and call and response is something that's extremely West African. Mm-hmm. And I want to ask the question: in your studies, how were you able to trace the small, the remnants of of African music and African tone, African movement in the marching band? And we see it in the church, we see it and we sing in the marching band, and in Black music in the diaspora in general. So I just want to know, how were you able to trace that in the marching band?
Oh, it's all African to me. And I don't mean that just like as a pat answer, but you think about perhaps the most important ensemble or section within the marching band is the drum line. And so very often you have battles of drum lines, not even the whole band, but Bethune-Cookman's drum line and our drum line, and how we have repurposed the drums in a band formation that includes a bass drum. It can include the quads to kind of represent the timbre of a tom-tom drum and whatnot, and how they are played, right? We are, consciously or not, we're drawing on both the role of percussion, the role of syncopation and sort of constructing these rhythms. All of that is derived from drumming traditions that we see in West Africa still to this day, right? And so a good friend of mine who is the chair of the music department at Jackson State University, at HBCU, Jamea's alma mater, Lisa Beckley Roberts, she has an African dance and drumming ensemble at Jackson State, and she took them back to the Gambia last summer so that they could understand the similarity both between what they were learning in their ensemble, but also just the music they listened to in general, and sort of understand, not understand sort of, but understand how similar these relationships are. And so I think HBCU bands, we talked about the battles, and that's a way of, you have these ideas of competition in African music as well, like showing off in a sense, not actually trying to win something. And so philosophically, you see it there. You see it there in the role of these drum lines and sort of what they represent, the timbres, and how those cadences are written and what they're meant to represent, right? Consciously or not, it remains. And so for me, there is a direct line that flows through, especially when we remember, we're talking about HBCU marching bands, but the brass band traditions that come out of New Orleans are a huge part of what starts to feed what HBCU bands become. And New Orleans is significant because, you know, I say it's the most unique place in the United States in a way because of that, how Black people had a different experience in New Orleans because of Congo Square, where they could play drums and they could dance, whereas in the rest of the United States, it was outlawed. And so you find, if you listen to HBCU bands like Southern University, Grambling, I'll give them a little love, Grambling in Louisiana, their approach to how they use their drum lines and the rhythms of their cadences is far similar to what we hear coming out of the brass band traditions that come out of the Congo Square drumming traditions than other HBCU bands you would talk about. And so it's certainly there, I think, and how, and also the connection between movement and dance in general. The fact that when HBCU bands started to do that, they were breaking the mold of what was supposed to, you weren't supposed to dance like that. You were supposed to adhere far more closer to the military band experience, and military bands don't jam, they don't dance. And so all of that to me represents both Black American interpretations of African ways of making music, and the role of instruments in these ensembles, the role of, as you mentioned, call and response between the sections sometimes, which is, again, going back to the musical arrangements, as well as the call and response that's supposed to exist between the band and those in the stands. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, excellent.
We have one?
It's being recorded, though, I think. So.
Hey, super important conversation. So glad you guys are here. It's been amazing to listen to you guys tell the stories about how important our culture is. And sometimes I find myself getting frustrated at our culture being co-opted. Our music, our dance, our ways of improvising get taken by a broader audience that then can't do what we do. Mm-hmm. So then they manipulate it and they call their version the correct version, and ours, well, kind of sloppy. Mm-hmm. I think about dance, and I think about, you know, you go to a dance competition, you won't find Black folks at dance competition anymore, not one that's televised at least. And half that shit, we invented it. Mm-hmm. But now, no, your dance, well, you know, you don't have the choreography down. No, I don't need the choreography. I'm dancing to music. So do you guys find yourself frustrated as you guys watch the music, the art co-opted? And how can we continue to tell these stories about where the origins of our stuff comes from so that people never get it confused?
The co-opting of dance is a very interesting space to talk about, because you have to remember that at the impetus of us being called a complete person, the only way that we could get into the arenas where it was supposedly respectable to be doing these things was arenas where black people weren't allowed to watch. Not only are you not allowed to watch, but when you come in as a performer, you're going to perform under the guise of the way we, the people who've been a whole person way longer than you, say it's going to go. It's part of why the Fifth Jubilee singers were traveling around the world singing Negro spirituals and not gospel. They're two different things. It's co-option in and of itself, right? So what's that saying? Like you have no choice but to get in bed with the devil. You can be the pro-bliggity blackest person on the planet, but if you don't have access to someone outside of the culture who has access to the spaces where you believe your work belongs, how do you get in that door aside from burning the damn building down and doing it outside, right? So there's this like necessary evil of getting next to the very person that's gonna co-opt you. The art is, I'm gonna let you use me for a hot second, but when I get inside, we gonna punish y'all. We're gonna show you a manner in which to present this that is undeniably far advanced compared to your cha-cha-cha chart. Cha-cha-cha is cool, but that's taking a piece of some Yoruba stuff. That's taking a piece of some Sanctified Baptist stuff. That's taking a piece of some Creole stuff, a piece of some Geechee stuff, and making it into a nice little package that soccer moms from Nebraska can stomach. And don't nobody want that food? Don't nobody want no raisins in their potato salad?
No.
People that grew up with raisins in their potato salad don't want raisins in their potato salad. It ain't till they come to your mama crib and get that fried chicken for the first time. You know what I mean? We're here to talk about it, right? It's also about not being compromising about how we express ourselves about these points. You know? It's the art of we have to collectively lower our voice and improve our debate. We come to this table about these things so distraught and emotional and angry that you get lost in the sauce of the feelings, and the very reason you came there to dispute this point, this co-option point, you shat the bed before you get in the door because you're coming from all emotion, right? It's not until you put a little bit of, whoa, what is it? The same person that'll come to the table emotional in a dialogue like that will also tell you in another situation that real bad boys move in silence. What a contradiction in terms. Because I just seen you loud as hell for no damn reason other than to mess up this chance for us to tell this point about the fact that the way we do it is the raw. They call it primitive because it comes of the earth. We are of the earth. If that makes me primitive and you need to title it that way, so be it. But get in line. It's $10 per man to get in the door. Call it what you want. We're going to do it how we do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's how we present ourselves at our place. Yeah, that's cute. The little commercial model is nice. That's cool. We ain't got no knock on that, but that ain't who we are. And why are you standing at our stuff asking us why we aren't as commercial as you? If we were as commercial as you, we'd be going to somebody else's shit trying to get inspired. Nobody's doing the Charleston trying to, the little variation of the Charleston in house dancing, but we're not like, hey, I feel like Fred Astaire. No, you don't. You want to feel like James Brown. You want to feel like Alvin Ailey. You want to feel like, So there's no denial of that, but even those of us that feel this way, sometimes when we come to the table to talk about it, we come a little shy.
Yeah.
Or we come extra emotional. Both of those dynamics thwart the argument. We step on our own argument, fresh out the gate.
Question over here.
Oh, there's one more? Okay, we can do one more.
This is the last one. Yeah.
So just a quick question. I was watching a video on Amapiano and I think Three Step King, and I was just thinking, wow, AI cannot replicate this. And I was just thinking about how we are so, our energy is like spiritual, it's deep. We're so creative and we're so magical. And I just want to know, what do you guys think about AI's place in the future? Do you think it's going to expose how can't compare with how we create?
I think pretty soon we're gonna. Anybody see the movie Wall-E?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Pixar movie? Like in a minute, that's about to be reality. That's how the world is gonna operate. You're gonna be in a bubble with a 72-ounce 7-Eleven cup of sugary ass Pepsi. Buttons to touch all your cerebral dynamics, because most of the living that we do is already through these. I mean, we're here on a panel with the machine on the desk, so we're on our way towards the machines doing everything that humans do. But you got to ask, why is that? Because the remaining colonizers of the world want free labor again. So, because they're not going to be able to get it out of us, and they're going to be getting it out of machines, our ability to express ourselves in the workplace is going to go away. Our ability to express ourselves anywhere near the workplace is going to go away. If you speak out too loudly in a public forum, a machine is going to run up on you in a manner that you can't outrun RoboCop. Like, Buddy came out of fires and getting run over by shit. Like, he's coming back. He'll be here in 5 minutes. What are we going to do? I don't think AI can replace anything but labor and colonial power. What is the vocabulary that we can all collectively come into that can not necessarily make us immune to it? I mean, as much as we can't stand these systems, we need them. We don't know anything but them, you know? How many people in this room know how to make fire?
Oh, no.
Build shelter. You ever shot an animal? Like, what would we do without a grocery store? These systems we complain a lot, but, you know, we're going to get out in the bush a little bit, do some camping, figure this shit out, because the boogeyman is coming. You know, is it us that sees it? Is it our children that see it? It's spooky. It's kind of dark to think about, but it's inevitably on the way. You know, them dumb robot dog tests and throwing robots off the side of cars while they move, like, that's a real thing. And, you know, that's the new overseer.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about something you said, and I'm paraphrasing, but like, in the sense that these technologies, they can really ultimately, at least for now, and this is likely changing soon, replicate well things that already sort of exist, right? And I think what Black people here and all over have, and this goes back to your question about Afrofuturism, have always had to do is to come up with something that the world has never seen or heard before. Not so much for as a matter of creative enterprise as much as one of survival, right? And so I think if there's something to put hope in, it's in the ongoing ability that we've had to have. We've had more practice at that than a whole lot of people, right? I'm reminded of something my mentor once told me, the late, great Greg Tate, and I was complaining about gentrification or something or other. And he, if you don't know Greg, he was like the coolest man in the room everywhere he went. Great writer, phenomenal writer who wrote for The Village Voice and elsewhere for many years. And he was like, you know, sis, I don't really know what you worry about. He was like, our stuff goes wherever we go. You know what I'm saying? And I think that that's true. We were talking about a physical space in that moment. But I think that's true come what may. Our stuff is in us because it's had to be. You know, if you talk about something like enslavement, where you're literally stripped of so many things, what we had to make a culture all over again only came from what we could carry within us. You know what I'm saying? And from that, look at what our ancestors have wrought. And so I'm not romanticizing and saying it will be easy, it will be simple, there will not be cost, it won't be difficult, all of that. But if there is a kernel of something to have hope in, I think it's in that ability that is not theoretical, but we have had to have for generations.
Well said. Thank you. And with that, I think we've come to the end of this section, and I'm going to turn it back over to Amanda, but first, can we give a nice round of applause to both of these panelists? Thank you for being here. Amanda?
So I wanted to finish off with first, thank you, thank you, thank you. This has been incredible to just get to listen to and hear from all of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for coming out tonight. We have something interesting. We're trying something new, a collaborative playlist for this program. We invite participants to join in the collaborative playlist. It's available to Spotify users, so you can share your favorite songs or inspirations from Black marching bands and explore what others in this group are listening to. So it's another way to keep talking to one another after this. Our next program is Friday, February 2nd, Conversations at MOCA, Spirituality and Diaspora. This is a conversation between Carlos Esteves and Alexandria Arrachea, two artists currently included in our second exhibition, the Juan Francisco Elso's Por America exhibition. It's deeply rooted in the tradition of Afro-Cuban spiritual practices, and it serves as a poignant lens through which we can explore our relationships between faith, culture, and history. So I invite you all to come back February 2nd. Come back home to MOCA. I'd love to see you again. And thank you again to all of you.
Thank you.